Hi, welcome to Lights Camera Author. I'm Jim Juno, and this is where we talk about books, books that are written by authors who write about Hollywood, movies, TV, and everything in between. And I am talking tonight with a very special guest. Her name is Marilyn Ann Moss, and she has a new book. I believe it just came out this week, called "The Farrows of Hollywood: Their Dark Side of Paradise." Welcome, Marilyn.
Hello, and thank you.
Now, this book came out, I believe, just a few days ago.
Well, actually, the 11th.
The 11th, okay. So
Yeah.
earlier this month in April, and that's when we're recording this. Um, this is really the story of John Farrow, who was a movie director, and his daughter, who I guess would be better well known to today's audiences, contemporary audiences. Her name is Mia Farrow, and if you've seen if you've seen Rosemary's Baby or any modern movie, you've heard of Mia Farrow
Or Woody Allen's movies.
or Woody Allen movie. Yes, indeed. And also let's we're going to talk about that in just a moment. But John Farrow, he was big in film noir, and he was an Australian producer who basically has gone under the radar, hasn't he?
Yeah, I'd say lost in history.
Yeah, I mean it's gotten kind of forgotten, and but he was very big during his time, very reliable. I'll put it that way.
Very serious.
Very serious, and but this book talks about the issues that he had and how they transferred more or less over to Mia. He was a very, very talented producer or director, but personality wise, he wasn't all that great, was he?
No.
Well, tell me a little bit about him.
Well, it's the thing when you talk about John Farrow, it's really hard to know if anything you're saying has any truth to it. Because when he got well, everything that was written about John Farrow was written by him and therefore followed, you know, by the press or, whoever gossip columnist, because he spent a lot of years in gossip columnists pages with his on again off again romance with Maureen O'Sullivan, whom he eventually married. So anything you know about John Farrow, you have to be a little skeptical. The thing is, John Farrow was so talented as a writer, but and something he gave to his family, but um, not entirely able to distinguish the real world from fantasy. So a lot of what he said about himself, we don't know, but we do know from certain facts, from certain research I did, that he was born in 1904 in Australia, in Sydney, and his parents were gone within the first year of his birth, actually, within the first couple of months. His father abandoned the family and put his mother, who never saw her son, into a mental hospital
Mm.
where she died a couple of months later, I believe. So he was essentially in the world on his own. He had an aunt who raised him, but he grew up in a context that he had to create himself. So if you know what I'm saying,
Hmm.
it wasn't that there was a lot of information coming in from others to him as to how one behaves in the world, which created a lot of problems for him later on because he didn't get along with people very well. But he was incredibly talented as a writer, as a historian, and visually talented too, which people who don't know about him know even less about. As little as he's known, what's known about him is more the film noir aspect of his work, but not so much as a technician, which really should be paid attention to. because he was great on every front. He just couldn't get along with anyone he worked with.
He won the Academy Award when you mentioned his writing. He won it for Around the World in 80 Days.
He shared it, but he was fired from that film after one day.
After one day.
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit about how did he get
Well,
fired after one day?
he unfortunately bucked up against Mike Todd, who was not someone who was going to let others control what he wanted. So you had two personalities like that, and one owned more than the other, and the other had to go. Because that was at the end of Farrow's career, pretty much.
Yeah, and he also
wasn't getting. Sorry.
That's okay. Go ahead.
Well, he wasn't getting that many offers at that point.
And he died at a relatively young age, I believe around 53 years old.
58.
Okay. And very suddenly, heart attack. But he was a philanderer. Maureen O'Sullivan, that you mentioned, was married to him for, I would say, decades, about almost 30 years.
About 27 years.
27 years.
Mm-hmm. The interesting thing is that she knew the game really well about the PR machine and how to look like things are happy, and women's magazines and fantasy, and letting women audiences know how beautiful their family was and how they decorated their home. But behind all that was a lot of heartache.
Yeah, he didn't have any problems having affairs upon affairs with different women.
Nope.
Yeah, go ahead.
No, he didn't.
Yeah. Okay, but was he abusive? I remember.
Yes.
For some reason I picked that up in your book.
What do you mean by that?
Well, of course, mentally by having the affairs, but physically, he wasn't abusive physically, but he was abusive.
I'm so sorry. I'm sorry. I can't control her. Okay.
That's okay. It's no problem. I got one of my own.
Can you edit this out?
People love the dogs. I mean, come on.
Stop. Okay. Yes, he was physically abusive to his children. Yeah. Punishment.
If you're lucky, you're going to hear Jules the movie hound pop up, so she. But yeah, he was physically abusive to the children more, and that, unfortunately, I believe, transferred over to Mia Farrow.
Well, I only know what her children said, the ones who weren't on her side when this became an issue in the 90s and then on. I can document what they said, but I can't say myself what was happening. But it didn't sound good.
Right.
But yeah.
Now that leads me to the next chapter of my questioning, moving over to Mia Farrow, because, like you said, it started in the 90s, around 1991 and 92. She was not married to, but she was involved in a 12-year relationship with Woody Allen, and she had children from a previous marriage, and they had children, and let me get my facts straight here. They adopted is it Sunyi? Is that the name?
Sunyi was not adopted by them. Sunyi was adopted by Andre Previn and Mia.
Right.
He was older.
And
right, yeah.
Excuse me. Yeah. And so it became, in 1991, there became a bitter custody battle between Mia Farrow and
92.
Woody Allen. 92.
Yeah.
And this is when the accusations and the allegations first came out. So right. Because Mia and it all came from the Mia Farrow camp.
Oh yeah.
So
Woody Allen had took the posture of, I'm stunned.
Yes,
what did I do?
And I'm gonna maybe get in a little bit of trouble here with listeners, but sorry. The timing of the accusations I've always found suspect.
A lot have, many have.
Yeah. I'll let you tell us what exactly was the accusations.
Well, the accusations were mainly that Woody molested their 7-year-old adopted daughter, who they did adopt together, Dylan.
Mm-hmm.
And this, for some reason, immediately drew more supporters to Mia's camp than to Woody's. And then later, when the Me Too movement was blowing everywhere, it even became enlarged. So Woody ultimately has been seen as a possible child molester. Nothing has ever been proven. That was the accusation.
Mm-hmm. And he has always denied that. Let's
Yes.
make clear. Very, very vehemently denied it. Whereas just as vehemently, Mia Farrow and Dylan Farrow stand by their stories.
Yeah.
So
they're stories. They are stories, and they don't seem to or ever will have an ending.
All we can say is this: is that the New York Department, New York Department of Child Protect. I want to say Child Protective Services, but they found no credible evidence.
No.
And that is something which
not only that, but there were investigations months earlier, before the molestation issue came up, where he was going to be adopting Dylan. I mean, not Dylan. He was going to be. I can't recall. It's so much information in my head, but there was another avenue open to finding evidence of Woody's bad behavior, and that was never an issue in a previous investigation, just as a matter of fact of adopting. Okay, anything the court had to do or social services had to do, nothing ever looked suspect.
And that's another thing. Yeah, that was something I was wondering when you were researching this story. Going into it, what did you know about the story?
Well,
or about the accusations?
I knew about Woody and Mia ad nauseum, as most people did. Mm-hmm. It was old by then. But my main objective was to try to understand Mia's family, because I was fascinated by John Farrow. And I wanted his story to be out there, because you can't understand Mia without understanding her father. And I was trying to broaden the story into a biography of a family. So my intent was not to focus on Mia and Woody. It was to show a family in Hollywood who gave an aura of royalty and fairy tale living, in Beverly Hills. Everything was beautiful, and I was fascinated with what was really behind it, because I was very interested in John Farrow. Biography and autobiography are my specialties, and I'm fascinated by what's underneath the actual words that someone is saying.
That's what my next question. How did you get interested in John Farrow?
I was always interested in John Farrow, but I knew that nobody would be interested in John Farrow alone. So when the Mia thing, Mia Woody issue had been circulating around me for so many years, as it did everyone else, it just clicked in my head. I can look at John Farrow and then look at Mia, and I can get like 60 years of a biography of a family. So that was my interest. I wanted the biography to look at the family. And as I was doing research, I uncovered more and more information that was disturbing about their family.
One of the scenes that struck me in your book was that how you mentioned that the family, when they were going to church, the mother and the father would be at the front, and the three children in
No,
single
actually 7 children.
7 children.
Six-
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, in a single file.
Yes.
That's almost like a military family.
Yes. Well, he was that kind of father. He was in the military, during the war, and he was in the Merchant Marine when in his younger days. So military was part of his psyche, and he ran the family. It was not Maureen.
Mm.
She was someone who really wanted to be left alone and to hide in her room. And in in addition to that, the children didn't see their parents very often. That was a different part of the house. But yes, in public, they always looked either military or quiet or beautiful, like royalty.
Didn't
Yeah.
it? Didn't he also, or was it? I believe he locked one of them or maybe it was Mia who did this. That locked them in a outside in a shed.
No, that I don't recall. It might have slipped my mind. Who
That's okay.
Mia Mock? That was not something I read about Pharaoh or researched about Pharaoh. No.
For some reason I read that. I want to say I read that. I thought it was in your book, but I may be wrong on that.
Are you sure you're not thinking of Hitchcock?
No, not Alfred Hitchcock. No, even though he did, even though his father did do some things to him.
Yeah.
No, no, it just when I was reading it, it just struck me how, in many ways, Mia Farrow and John Farrow are so similar. You know,
Yeah. Yeah. And um, issues between daughters and fathers, well, that's complex. And you as a daughter, you love your father, but what do you do when your father abuses you and then
exactly.
and then
Yeah.
dies? So you lose someone, the love object, but that's someone who with whom your feelings are forever ambivalent.
So after your research, after you've been through everything, here comes a loaded question. Do you believe that Woody Allen was a molester, or are you believe that Woody's denials?
Um, I think that instead of talking about the act, I think you have to stay with the stories. I can't say whether an act occurred because I am just still circulating in the stories that came out of both camps. So I don't know if anybody can ever know, but
Oh,
I can say that I can give you a lot of evidence that I uncovered in the book where some of the language, some of the descriptions, some of the attitude, some of the dialogue in Mia's autobiography is very similar to information that Dylan provided or that Mia then said in the documentary on HBO.
mm-hmm.
So I have to look at the similarity between Mia's early life and what she's saying. I can't know if anything happened.
Yes.
I
Uh,
I you know, I'm trying to understand and hope I've conveyed that the story Mia is telling hides an untold story.
there may be more to it than what we're hearing.
Yeah.
Um, I did see an interview that Dylan did a few years ago. I guess it was on CBS this morning with Gail King, and of course, she reiterated what happened. Um, I just, I just don't know. I mean, I know she's an author, and I know she's appeared on TV a lot. And her story, I mean, but it is so, I don't want to say well rehearsed. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying
You
that,
could say that.
okay, well, you believe it is well rehearsed because, I mean, it sounds like you were saying that. Well, did she get coached? Do you feel she got coached by a very talented actress mother?
Well, you want me to go to jail?
No, I want you to. I don't want to get
It's
sued either.
possible. It's possible. It's
It's
possible.
possible. We won't know for certain.
Anything is possible. But
Yeah,
and when you're dealing with the situation or a family like this, you don't you can't take anything for truth.
true. See,
Totally.
and yeah,
What is, that the minute you write about your life or anybody else, including me, about other people's lives, you're no longer dealing with fact, you're dealing with your interpretation because it's all in the past and you don't know what the facts are, and you're in a sense lying, or
yeah.
you're creating a fictive rehash of the past because the past is always lost.
Have you heard from any of the Pharaohs or Woody Allen, or did you try to contact any of them?
I contacted Mia, um, and asked her if she would talk to me about her father. I contacted, well, okay, staying with Mia, she wrote a note to the person who was contacting her for me, and I got a copy of it. And she said, I'm really sorry, but I can't remember any more than I've already said. And there were just things that were like superficial, as if she misunderstood my intention. And so I thought she told me quite a lot in that
Yeah,
in that refusal.
yeah.
Um,
See, and
well, I know for
yeah,
sure she doesn't. It is very difficult, I think, to write about your life when it was that emotionally hard, traumatic. Because what I say in this book is that the children were traumatized, and that's been passed on. Because we know about trauma that it gets into the body after years, and it stays in the body, and you pass it on in ways that you're not always aware of. And I that's my point in the book, is that we are all related by trauma. We've all had trauma. There's no child in the world who hasn't had some kind of trauma, you know, some worse than
mhm.
others, because childhood's very, very vulnerable time. And most people don't have the trauma that I saw happening in the Farrow family. But whatever, like what they say about post-traumatic syndrome, is that it's too much when it happens. There's too much information, too much going on coming at you, so that you cannot experience it all at one time. It goes kind of into the unconscious. I'm a great believer in that, and some people don't like to hear that, but I think it stays there, and I think that's possible with Mia. And when something bad happens later on, it suddenly comes back. And I
That's
think the shock of discovering those photos of Sun Yi was really traumatic.
right.
Betray.
And for those of you who don't realize what she was saying is that that's how Mia found out about the affair between Woody Allen and his adopted stepdaughter. Um,
No, she wasn't even adopted by Woody.
that's right. She never was adopted by Woody. Yeah, I mean,
So that's something I struggled with in the book. Is she his daughter? No, but the family unit, the way we live in our culture with the family unit, she was Mia's daughter. So how much of that makes him her father?
Yes, true, and that's exactly true because and she was she wasn't 21, but I believe she was I want to say 18 or 19.
Yeah, old, much older. And
Oh,
I don't think it wasn't so much whether to Mia whether or not she was adopted. It was the fact that Mia felt betrayed.
yeah. Hmm. And understandably so. I mean, it could have been. I think Mia would have felt betrayed if it was not anybody, any female that she would find nude photos of.
Yeah, but the daughter
Oh
doesn't
no,
get
it
worse than
doesn't. Right, exactly. Well, I
now.
tell.
Don't forget that Mia has her own checkered background
Yeah,
with and Previn's first wife,
yes.
Dory.
Yeah. She
And,
was Mia was having an affair with Andre Previn, wasn't she?
well, yeah, and got pregnant.
And got yeah. So
But then, yeah, but then don't forget also, I don't know if your viewers know this, but there was a song that Dory had written called In the Attic with Daddy, or Up in the Attic, something like that. I tell you, there's so much information floating around that I need like a psychological secretary. I don't know, organize all of it. But that was something that was so uncanny that it was like being in the attic with daddy and being molested, or something bad happened up in the attic with daddy. And that song was written long before Mia accused Woody.
So people draw your own conclusions from that.
Well,
Yeah.
I don't want to, I don't want to say anything for sure, but I do have to say it just seems kind of obvious that there's more to the story that Mia has told. There's
Yeah.
more behind it, and that there might be reasons, there might be words or behavior or feelings that Mia isn't aware that she's unleashing as she's telling her story.
Right. And she didn't
That's why
expect,
it's,
yeah.
yeah, that's why it stays at the level of story, and that's why it'll never be resolved.
The song you were talking about is called With My Daddy in the Attic.
Thank you,
Dory
reader.
Previn. I can find anything on the web, you know. So,
Yeah, that's very good.
but anyway, well, Marilyn Ann Moss is the author, and the book is the Marrows of Hollywood, the great the Pharaohs of Hollywood, the Dark Side of Paradise.
I should also say that there is a documentary on John Farrow that was made 2021
Mm-hmm. Man in the
by two
Shadows.
Australians, and I don't think they uncover nearly as much as I do, but I thought, okay, this is good. Now he's getting some attention, because as I worked on this book longer and longer I was on it, I realized this man was a tragic figure because he was so talented, so brilliant, and yet so self-inflicted.
Amazing. And that's a story that's familiar with a lot of artists. That
Yeah.
they are flawed geniuses, so to speak.
Oh,
So
yes.
well, Marilyn, thank you again for being
Thank you.
on Lights Camera Author tonight.
Thank
I,
you so much.
I
Be
take care.
well. Bye
Thank you.
bye.